Greetings and welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Jason Rezaian, a Press Club member and global opinions writer for the Washington Post. I'm honored on this World Press Freedom Day to introduce Maria Ressa, founder of Rappler, an innovative news site based in the Philippines. Maria will tell us about her ongoing court cases, which finds her in a courtroom seemingly every week as she defends herself against phony charges manufactured by the Philippine government as a form of censorship. Maria is a tireless advocate for press freedom around the world, and to her, the charges she's fighting in the Philippines should serve as a grave warning to all who believe in the importance of press freedom in a free society. I'm more than happy to see Maria again. She's a friend, someone I look up to, and I'm just glad to have this opportunity to speak with her tonight. So Maria, take it away. We'd love to hear from you.
Jason, it is so good to always see you, because to me, you're kind of, you prove to me you can come out the other side, and so I go through. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for helping us shine the light again. And I guess, I'll go over very short, why I feel there's so much at stake for our world today. What we do this year, I think, could potentially determine what our next decade will look like. Being a journalist has never been as dangerous as it is now. And I have 3 points that I want to share. First, my context, why the lessons are hard earned. Second, I'll define the problem. And while yes, the government is part of it, I think the enabling factors are not. In fact, they come from you, from the United States. And then finally, I'll share some of the principles we're using to live our way into the solution, because we have to. So why should you care about the Philippines? Because for the 6th year in a row, Filipinos spent the most time online and on social media globally. 100% of Filipinos on the internet are on Facebook. According to Hootsuite and We Are Social, YouTube this year overtook Facebook as the top social media site in Manila, in the Philippines. And because of the pandemic, new users are coming online in Southeast Asia at this blistering pace, adding 40 million new internet users last year compared to 100 million the 5 years before that, right? So as this is happening, it is getting harder and harder to hold power to account. In less than 2 years, you talked about this, Jason, the Philippine government filed 10 arrest warrants against me. That's 10 criminal charges. I posted bail 10 times because I'm doing my job. Last June, I and a former colleague were convicted of cyber libel for a story we published 8 years earlier at a time the law we allegedly violated didn't even exist. All told, all the charges I face carry a cumulative penalty of more than 100 years in prison. I mean, that's crazy, right? It's crazy, but it's not all bad. Okay, why? I bring 3 strands together that help me find the way forward. First, I head our business and tech, so I'm forced to evaluate the changes and to build for the future. Second, I'm proudly an investigative journalist. And then finally, I'm the target of attacks online and in the real world. So that is both a blessing and a curse. I get to see these evolving tactics, and I tell you about them. You can hear about some of them, you can read about them, because on March 8th this year, the International Center for Journalists analyzed nearly 500,000 social media posts and showed that 60% of those attacks against me were aimed to tear down credibility. In fact, if you look at the cloud, liar is the largest one there. So it's meant to tear down trust in my reporting, in Rappler's reporting. The other 40% are visceral, they're personal, sexist, misogynistic attacks. That's just meant to shame me and to pound me to silence. Well, okay, so it's not working. I'm not silent yet, but this brings us to the problem that we really need to solve. And there's this great quote from an American biologist, E.O. Wilson. He studied emergent behavior, ants. He said it best. He said, the crisis that we're facing Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And this goes to something, Jason, I've been talking about this forever. It feels like Cassandra and Sisyphus combined. Social media. Social media has become a behavior modification system, and we are Pavlov's dogs, experimented on in real time with disastrous consequences. Facebook is the world's largest distributor of news, and yet studies have shown that on social media, lies laced with anger and hate spread faster and further than really boring facts. We actually spend our entire careers learning how to make facts, how to make you interested in facts, how to tell good stories. Here we are, the very platforms that deliver the facts to you are biased against facts, biased against journalists. They are, by design, dividing us and radicalizing us. I'll give you an example that we've lived through in the Philippines. One technical decision made by every social media platform to grow with algorithms recommending friends of friends. Right? So they've all realized that's the most efficient way through A/B testing. So in 2016, after Rodrigo Duterte used social media to help him get elected, this friends of friends algorithm, along with his divisive us against them rhetoric, well, they did this. At this point, we all agreed on the facts. But if you're pro Duterte and you were getting recommendations for friends of friends, you move further right. If you're anti Duterte, you moved further left. And over time, the chasm grew. Substitute pro Trump, anti Trump, right? I mean, the similar styles of leadership. These algorithms also radicalize, right? Like, remember the 9/11 conspiracy theories and how they, if you watched a video on a 9/11 conspiracy theory, you're going to get shown another one. One of the moms in a do-it-yourself Facebook group actually, this is anecdotal, right? But this Facebook group was about making your own baby food, and one of the moms there, because they were in a DIY Facebook group, the recommendation that she got was to join an anti-vax group. And she clicked on that recommendation. The next one she got was QAnon.
Mm.
Right? So this is the impact of a business model Shoshana Zuboff called surveillance capitalism. When a system gathers your data, knows you better than you know yourself, and serves your most vulnerable moment to a message to a company, that's the new advertising, or to a government. That's the new propaganda. And this is not like the old days, right? In today's world, a lie told a million times becomes a fact. You've heard me say this, Jason. Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without any of these three, democracy as we know it, and beyond that, all meaningful human endeavor becomes impossible. Without facts, we have no shared reality, and it becomes impossible to tackle the existential problems we face: climate change, coronavirus, the battle for truth. We're living in the matrix, fed an illusion we're predisposed to believe, determined by power and money. And our shared reality is splintered into more than 3 billion Truman shows. Okay, so what are we going to do? How do we survive? It's been nearly 5 years for us in Rappler that we've been living through this. In order to live our way into the answer, we focus on 3 pillars: technology, journalism, and community, right? On technology, we have 2 initiatives. I'm working very hard with global groups to find regulations. That's a shift for me, Jason, right? We first started talking and I thought, enlightened self-interest would work for the social media platforms. It hasn't worked. We need to leave the best of what they do and put guardrails on the worst of text manipulations. So last year, I co-chaired the Infodemics Working Group with former EU Parliament member Maria Ressa. In our paper that was released by the Forum on Information and Democracy, we recommended a dozen systemic solutions, more than 250 tactical steps. I'm watching closely the evolution of the EU's Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, the UK's Online Harms Bill, the US debate on Section 230. What you do matters so much to us because in the end, these are American companies. Separately, we're building our own tech. that protects the public sphere. That's got to be part of it, that protects the facts. We rolled out our new platform called Lighthouse last year on World Press Freedom Day. It is painful. And we continue to build, not just for distribution, but for communities to grow. When we created Rappler, my elevator pitch was that we build communities of action. The food we feed our communities is journalism. We need to help independent news organizations survive. So, in many ways, the virus of lies in the virtual world is more dangerous than the coronavirus because this is highly contagious. And when you get infected, you become impervious to facts. It feeds on our fears. It changes the way you look at the world. You become angrier, more isolated, and it erupts in events like January 6th on Capitol Hill. Like a drug addiction, it will take years for rehabilitation to cure this, right? And bring back a shared reality. So the longer we wait for action, the more time it will take to heal these divisions. Information operations, Russian disinformation, Chinese disinformation that have targeted me, they target the fracture lines of society. And what they try to do is to pound it open. Leaders try to heal this decision. We have to act. We have to come together and realize that an atom bomb has been dropped on our information ecosystem. And just like the world did after World War II, when it created NATO, Bretton Woods, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we need to upgrade our medieval institutions to put guardrails against the godlike technology that is manipulating our biology, our Paleolithic emotions. I've jumped out of a plane. I'm hoping my parachute will open high enough for me to survive. And for lessons on what to do during these crazy times, I look to you, Jason. For everyone else listening, please, this is the time to act because what you do today will create the tomorrows that we will live through.
Powerful words from someone who is on the front line of this battle and has been for a long time. Maria, I have a handful of questions for you, but my first one is, you and I have the opportunity to convene at different conferences. We did during the before times, and I'm sure we will again after, hopefully soon. Your message resonates with people in the West. But I wonder, in the Philippines, what kind of traction are you getting? Do you feel like you're facing an uphill battle? I know you are somebody who is not going to give up, but do you think that the good side's going to win?
I think the jury's still out, right? And I don't know. I mean, I could have asked you that before your elections, because I think the U.S. just eked through this time period. Here, look, I think the difference between you and us, the US and the Philippines, is your institutions are really stronger, much stronger, even though you feel like it's not. Your institutions are stronger. Our institutions, we have a captured legislature. If you look at how the largest broadcaster, the franchise for ABS-CBN was taken away, it was shut down. This is our largest television network, was shut down May 5th last year, a few days after World Press Freedom Day. The legislature took away their franchise to operate. The last time ABS-CBN was shut down was in 1972 when Marcos declared martial law. The manipulation is the reason I talked about it a lot, is because real people have been misled and they don't know that they've been misled. The same way that more people voted for Trump this in 2020, right? Like,
Right.
These are beliefs, and when you give them lies and they believe it, and their fear leads them to choose something or leads to violence, it is hard. People are doing it from a place of passion, so that needs to get curtailed. I mean, like I said, I don't know where this is going to lead. I do know that people are watching, Filipinos are watching. If you go by statistical surveys, President Duterte is, far and away far more popular than Trump. At some point, his popularity ratings went as high beyond 90%.
Wow.
But how much of it is manipulated by social media, right?
Right.
Because we're really the petri dish for this. And then the last part is how much of it is governed by fear.
Right.
Because unlike you, human rights activists have said that tens of thousands of people have been killed in this brutal drug war. If you stand up and question the government, you get hammered down. There's an Indonesian phrase, the paku buwono, the nail that stands up gets the hammer.
Mm.
So it's a long answer to the way I think about it is this, and uh, I know that I have to keep doing my job. Rappler has to keep exposing corruption, has got to hold government account because it's made it so that it's almost impossible to do that. But the better we are at doing that, the better our people, the more information our people will get, and the greater the chances that I don't go to jail. Because in the end, and I guess that's it, right? What I do today will matter, will help determine um, what my future will look like.
You said something interesting about, the need potentially for regulations, and obviously people like you and me worry deeply when we start to think that that might be necessary. Is there a country with a model that's working in terms of how they handle social media and its proliferation right now? Does a model exist?
No, no. And I really have been looking, like and I've looked at every single thing, including there's a new platform that uses it's called BitCloud, right? Using crypto. I was part of Civil, this experiment to look at news on crypto, on the blockchain. Um, there isn't any, and I think part of what I'm realizing in the last couple of years is that the crowd, the wisdom of the crowds, what James Suriaki called the wisdom of the crowds, turns into a mob if you don't put guardrails in place. And that's exactly what we have on social media right now is this mob rule, and mob rule for power and money, right? Information operations that are instigated by governments, and probably the most successful one. Look, it started in 2014 in the Ukraine, and then the most successful one is the 2016 elections in the United States, because the evidence is there already in terms of the tactics used. But look, how do we do this going forward? I think that um, so far one of the most successful is maybe Wikipedia, because it's grounded in the real world, in the sense that there are links that are based on reality, right? Disaggregating social media from reality leaves it ripe. It's wide open for people to manipulate. And that has been good for the business. I mean, how much Facebook made $29 billion last year, right? I mean, the business models work, but not society. And I really hope enlightened self-interest again, given where we are. But even Wikipedia has its problems. It's being gamed now, and it goes hand in hand, because Wikipedia tends to be the number one when you search on Google. Um, Wikipedia's number one, whatever that is. If I search Jason Rezaian, I'm sure I'm going to get a Wikipedia page. So this is a vulnerability again, and we have to stop the arms race by coming up with a system of accountability, because in the end, that's all I'm asking for, is to stop the impunity, right? It's been like there are laws in the real world,
Right.
and those laws aren't there in the virtual world. In the virtual world, you can do anything. You can yell bomb, you can yell fire in a crowded, and if you did any of this, if you yelled bomb in an airport, there
Get
would
around.
be repercussions.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Um, I, I want to ask you slightly more personal question. This documentary film, A Thousand Cuts, was made about your experience and also covering the kind of rise of Duterte and his politics. Um, I want to know how this has affected you personally and what you've learned about yourself in dealing with these challenges and all that you've learned about the digital sphere over the last few years.
What I learned about myself, uh, anger management. That's been really important. I mean, we became journalists in search of justice, right? And you know, I feel the injustice. That's why I'm asking for an end to the impunity. There is no sense of justice in the virtual world, and that has now translated into the real world for me, right? So, um, part of the reason I took myself out of the editorial hierarchy of Rappler is because I can't pretend that I don't see the abuses of power, the violations of the constitutions. I see it in my cases. So I can't pretend like it isn't there.
Right.
So I have no editorial powers to give Rappler more freedom. Um, so I understand why people get angry when there's no sense of justice. But I also know that rule of law becomes incredibly important, not just in the Philippines, but international rule of law, right? Because I think that's why this moment is also pivotal, because international law is crumbling as well. And they go hand in hand, right? Because I don't think it's a coincidence that the countries that are using influence or information operations against their citizens and creating kind of a global network that are uniting far right and extremist groups, these nations are the ones that are manipulating their citizens. Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, right? I mean, it's so interesting. I just read this study that looked at the disinformation networks behind the hashtag AstraZeneca.
Mm.
And there are three countries that popped up. India, linked to a site that's known for disinformation. Russia, RT, and then Saudi Arabia, Al Arabiya was there, right? So so again, there's an entire information ecosystem. Sorry, so I'm taking you down my rabbit hole, but um, so sense of justice, rule of law, and then I think the other one of in terms of what I've learned about the internet. We say this all the time. Rappler, we created Rappler on Facebook. If Facebook search was better, I maybe we wouldn't even have created a separate website. I'm just so glad now that we did create the website, because I don't know what's wrong, right? Really, we're a Facebook partner. We're one of two Filipino fact-checking partners of Facebook. And in 2012, I knew Facebook in the Philippines better than Facebook knew it. And that's part of the reason I could feel when things shift, because, again, blessing and curse, I'm the target of attacks. When Facebook opened their office here, it was primarily a sales office. We told them what was great about it. And I want to go back to that. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But as it stands right now, the social media platforms need to be revamped. Their business model needs to be revamped. And all it will take is political will on their part. What they are giving up in exchange for profit is our freedoms.
I think that sense of injustice and recognizing it and the importance of rule of law is something that we often take for granted, especially those of us who've been raised in the U.S. Or spent significant time here. And I think in a way, it's kind of a gift to have been forced into a space of experiencing extreme injustice and recognizing the importance of upholding the institutions that uphold law. We've talked about a lot of heavy stuff, and I want to close with something a little bit brighter. I would love to hear what inspires hope in Maria Ressa.
If it's a glass half empty, half full, I'm a glass half full person. Always, always have been. um, because I always choose hope. Because if without it, it's like trust. Without, George Schultz said this, right? He said, with trust, all things are possible. Without trust, nothing is possible.
Yeah.
You can substitute hope. With hope, all things are possible. Without hope, nothing is possible, because then you don't have the energy to create. And, make no mistake, we are creating our world. You know this. So what you guys may not know is I read Jason's book cover to cover. When you were there in the cell, what kept you afloat was hope, even when it looked like, there wasn't any, and you didn't know what was going on outside. So I'm speaking for you now, Jason. I guess, where do I get hope? The ability to create. That's why we're building a tech platform for Rapper, right? The seeing our reporters do their stories, stand up to power, seeing the global reaction. I talked 3 times about January 6th in our time together, but it was bad for America, but also good for the global South. I hate to say it like that, because then that meant you acted, right? And your actions ripple down to us. I have hope that you will act, because we have presidential elections next year. I believe in the goodness of human nature. It still comes down to that, no matter, and I'm old and I'm cynical, right? But I still believe.
Keep believing, Maria. Thank you for everything that you do. I want to ask everybody to tweet out #HoldTheLine. And we'll be watching everything that happens and standing with you in solidarity as you do with us.